getting on that question of costs and how we're distributing the costs, you know, we're talking about billions of dollars potentially to be spent on the sound on top of the billions that we're already going to be spending. And you know, I've talked to folks in the marketing world who talk about how to sell organic or environmentally friendly products. And one of the things that I keep hearing over and over is you don't sell to consumers based on it being a benefit to the environment. You sell it based on it being a benefit to them. So if you're trying to sell an organic apple, you don't tell people this apple will require fewer pesticides and that's good for the environment. You say this organic apple has fewer pesticides on it and so that's better for your health.
Right.
And so
we have a perfect example of that in our showroom, and a customer comes in every day and can make the Build Green choices, and they do choose some. But the one that is becoming increasingly popular is the upgraded furnace, because they go through the math and say, oh, if I did this, if I spend this $2,000, my energy bill is reduced by 50% and I get that back in 3 years. They do that math. I tell you, they're very smart from that perspective. But things that don't bring them specific value, they don't select, like that rain barrel is sitting in our showroom as an option. Here's how it works, and here's what you're going to be doing. Very few people pick it. And it's not because it's expensive, it's because what does it really mean for me?
So how, you know, given the experience, I mean, Peter's testified to that, how do you sell a Puget Sound cleanup to the public? Right. Particularly when, you know, it could mean changes in places where we can build, changes in what we can do with our land, potentially extra costs. And, you know, Peter talks about the sort of economic benefit that comes from having a healthy Puget Sound. You know, I'm not sure how much, I'm not sure if anybody has measured that. There's the difficult to measure quality of life, but honestly, I'm not sure how many people who are moving here fish in the Puget Sound.
Right.
Or feel a real strong connection to it. And as long as it doesn't stink or catch on fire or have dead fish floating in it, are they going to be willing, are they going to feel a sense of urgency that's going to make them think, I have enough of an interest in this to pay for it?
Yeah, I think this is, we're thinking a lot about this. I mean, our role as the Puget Sound Partnership, part of it, and a major part of it, frankly, is to go explain to the public what's going on. And so let me give you a sort of a pithy example, but I think one that makes the point. So as we're learning in our action agenda process, it is very hard scientifically to credibly define the problem at a macro level. What is the current health and condition of the sound is not a obvious thing that just pops to mind, even when you're talking to scientists. As an example, I talked to 450 scientists the other day and asked them the question, does anybody here know, in case we missed you, what the current status of the health of Puget Sound is? And no hands went up, okay? So it's a hard question. It's a big system. There's, 2,000 plus miles of shoreline, and at some point, we've got to sort of chunk it apart and take on pieces of it. But the second thing that we're learning is that a lot of people don't know there's a problem with Puget Sound, and the fact of the matter that there is currently a big problem with Puget Sound, and a lot of people don't know about it. So, but upon reflection, based on my first point, which is we haven't really defined the problem, every thing that we ever put out as government agencies or otherwise, or the Cascade Land Conservancy or People for Puget Sound, has a whale on it, or a kid on a ferry, or somebody playing on the beach. And then, when you look out on a nice August day, even from the viaduct, it looks pretty good, okay? So, appearances are deceiving. There's no question about that. And we know there are significant problems with the sound, but we've got to get over some kind of a hump to really explain to the public what's going on. So I think, Peter's example is a very good one. The rain barrel thing, I think people don't, I'm just speculating, but I think one of the factors of people not doing rain barrels is that they don't get it. They don't get that if I live on the Issaquah Hill, that eventually the water and the sewage and everything else that runs, and the oil and copper and everything else that runs off my lot eventually ends up in Puget Sound and hurts Puget Sound. So it's making these connections that is one of the big, ingredients in my view to success. Because I will tell you, having now given about 50 speeches around the sound, people love the sound, period. They want to save it. They want to protect it. Once they get it, they're all in. I had a thing in Coopville, of all places, with 525 people in February coming out to do a one-day university on what's going on with the sound, to learn about the sound, sponsored by the WSU Beach Watchers. People are into this. The problem is a lot of people just don't even know there's a problem. And then they don't, secondarily, even if they know there's a generalized problem, they don't know what their specific lifestyle actions are doing to affect the sound. And so part of this is creating the ability for people to make good decisions. I mean, another thing we've talked about a lot, people have said, well, we need a program to get people to learn how to read labels so they can tell how much benzene's in a product or whatever it might be. And I said, we don't need that. We need a sticker, okay, that says good for Puget Sound or bad for Puget Sound. We got to get this to a much simpler place where people can make good consumer choices about this. And then we have to, I think, break, my wife's pregnant right now, so she's been eating all organic for the whole pregnancy. And I think, so to your fundamental point, which is we got to make this connection between my personal interest eating organic or whatever it might be, and it's good for the sound. It's both. And, to some ways, I remember Senator Magnuson's famous line, which was, find out what they like, how they like it, and give it to them just that way. I mean, that's the deal. We can't just say, I think the sound is this, and this is my way of telling the story. If it doesn't resonate with the people, then we're just wasting our time. We've got to go out of this in creative ways, smart ways, and we're really trying to figure out how to do this. But it's not straightforward. I mean, as you said.
The hope is, like the recycling program, we were the first in the nation to start recycling at the curb.
Right.
And there's what you were talking about. People made the connection. This is going into the landfill unless I do this. And they made sacrifices. They spent money and time sorting their equipment. Then it became cultural, and now it's standard procedure.
Right. Yeah.
And
just on that point, my wife, we went to Hawaii a couple years ago, and they don't recycle.
Yeah.
And she literally, at the end of when we were trying to go to the airport, she decided maybe this was a little implausible, but she was going to bring back our recycling from Hawaii to Seattle. So that's the cultural,
that is
point.
A problem.
Yeah, I know she might be a little on the edge, but I think but just little things like that. The bins, you get big bins to make it easy for people to recycle.
Right.
But I think your point is fundamentally right. Once people get the connection, that it is better to recycle this bottle or can and then to put it in a landfill, and they intellectually understand it, then it's easier for them to make good decisions. And I think 90% plus of the people in this region will make positive decisions if they get it and we make it simple for them to do it.
I think people need incentives as well, and sometimes more spoon feeding than you would like to think. I think people do things the way they do things, and they don't necessarily get motivated to make a change until something hits them in the face. And it's different things for different people, but I started using reusable bags at the grocery store when my son was old enough to point out to me that that made sense, whereas I knew that all along. But it took him asking me, well, why aren't First he was trying to figure out whether plastic was better than paper or paper was better than plastic. And then he was pretty little when he figured this out. He figured out neither was very good, and that's when we made the change. But it wasn't just a matter of knowing it. It was something needs to hit you in the face, and sometimes some extra help too. I mean, the city of Seattle brings around those recycling bins and puts them right in your driveway. And you don't have to figure out where to go to get one.
That's
and
exactly right.
It's brought to you, and I think a lot of people need that. That's probably how the rain barrel needs to work too. The city brings it to you and hooks it up and shows you how to use it and points out that you might be the one that in the summertime has water to put on your garden when your neighbor doesn't.